See the 100th anniversary birthday cake for the League of Women Voters and the 200th birthday cake for Susan B. Anthony. Today's her birthday. At the close, feel free to take any of the table decor, the hats, the chocolates, if there's any left. And feel free to go over, if you haven't had a chance to see the historical display, there'll be people that will still be cleaning off the tables, but the display will stay up until the last breath. For 100 years, the League has made contributions that have had major impacts on our government. The right to vote and become active citizens. Carrie Chapman Catt and her suffrage association fought hard for the right to vote for women. On February 14th, unfortunately on Valentine's Day, thank you, Carrie, in anticipation of the 1920 election, they began the League to help newly enfranchised women become politically educated and responsible voting citizens. This League continues to fight to expand and protect voting rights. As Carrie Catt once said, everybody counts in applying democracy, and there will never be a true democracy until every adult in it, without regard to race, sex, color, or creed, has his or her own inalienable and unpurchasable voice in government. You can clap on that one. We study and take positions. The League is nonpartisan and does not endorse candidates or parties. But we are political. And we take positions on issues and have from the start. From the beginning, the League leaders believed that citizens should play a critical role in advocacy. We lobby for government improvement and from subjects ranging from election reform to climate change. We encourage every citizen to voice his or her views on issues to their representatives. We're proud to be here for the 100th anniversary. We're still here because we have no other purpose than to make American government the best it can be. The League of Women Voters of the United States President, Chris Carson, has issued the following statement regarding the League's efforts ahead. Today, we are faced with many challenges that threaten to compromise our democracy. Our efforts to support voting rights and fight against voter suppression and discrimination at local, state, and national levels has been very successful. And this has been achieved primarily by educating and empowering voters, circulating special petitions, and intervening in several critical court cases. Thank you for being here today, and enjoy your meal. I would like to recognize all of you who are here or who are or have been League of Women Voter members. Could you please stand? It'll give you exercise too. Okay. Yes. Now, stay standing. Anybody that has ever used any League of Women Voters materials or gone to a League of Women Voters presentation, please stand. All right, now if there's anybody still sitting, could somebody get them a membership application? Okay. Carrie Chapman Catt had the organizational skills and the drive to turn a suffrage organization into an organization devoted to voting support and good governance. In the 100 years of its existence, the mission has not changed at all. Yay! Now, it would just be wonderful if we could have Carrie Chapman come back and talk to us about herself and making this transition. It would also just be really wonderful if she could see what we've become, what she started. Well, especially for us today, we have Carrie Chapman Catt coming to speak to us, and she just happens to be in the body of Catherine Chesley, so welcome, Carrie Chapman Catt.
I will be using my glasses today because you know what age does to you, and this is over 100. It is so exciting to be here on this very special occasion on the 100th birthday of the formation of this wonderful organization and Susan B. Anthony's 200th birthday celebration. So happy birthday, Susan. Look what happened. I always like to look back and find out, how on earth did this start? Well, for me, it started with a seed being planted. What happened was that our family moved to Iowa, and my father was working on a farm, and that's what we were doing. My mother was educated, and she was a very smart woman. And one day when I was about 13 years old, there was a group of farmers who passed us by in a wagon, and they picked my father up, and they were going into town. My question was, what are you doing? He says, well, we're going to vote. And I looked at my mother as if to say, well, what are you doing? And I said, why? And before I could get anything else out, my father said, voting is too important a duty to be left to the women. That was seed number one. The second seed happened when I wanted to go further on to school because I wanted to be a doctor. And my father and the rest of the family went, it's not going to work. Well, I did get into school. I got into the Iowa Agricultural School, as it was called at the time. There were 5 other women with me who entered that graduating class. I had very difficult times trying to get into some of the programs because some of the classes were closed to me. Another thing that was closed was I wanted to be on the debate team. I was a wonderful talker, as you could tell. So I thought, oh, debating ideas, wouldn't that be a fun thing to do? So I went to a meeting and I was told I could do all the research I wanted, but I couldn't open my mouth. There was another seed. Being a farm girl, I did a lot of outside activities, and I saw the men doing like military drills and working out, and I thought, oh, that would be fun. And of course, what happened? I couldn't do that either. So with the few women who were in the college, I said, let's start our own. So that seed began to germinate, and we developed a girls' debate team and a girls' military drill team. Thank you. Because my father did not fully pay for my tuition, as he did for my brothers. I was saddled with some debt afterwards, so I got out of school, and I went into a very female position. I became a teacher, because that was an okay thing to do. And I was so good at it because I was very organized, I was a very good writer, and I became the first female superintendent of the Mason City schools in Iowa. So you can see that the seed is beginning to sprout. Ironically, when I graduated, none of the other women who I started with ended up graduating. I was the only female graduate of that graduating class. Now, I sprouted out. The seed began to sprout. I became a little oak tree. And I met a man by the name of Leo Chapman. Leo was a wonderful young man. He had a lot of good potential going on. He was a writer. He was going to start a newspaper. He got a job in California. We got married, packed our bags, which were very small at the time because I didn't have a whole lot. And we headed to California. And he started a newspaper there. Unfortunately, he contacted typhoid and died the following year. Now, did I come home? No. I got a job on that newspaper as the first female reporter, and I wrote articles for a California newspaper. On one of my trips back home, I ran across and I ran into an old college friend of mine, George Catt. He had become an engineer, and we developed a relationship, and we were married soon after, and we developed a prenuptial contract. Number one, I was not going to be Mrs. George Catt. I was keeping my own name, which was unusual at that time. You see how the sprouting begins. We also, in that prenuptial contract, I said I need 4 months a year to work on the things that I think are important. He agreed. He said, my job is to make the money. Your job is to improve society. Works for me. So now, the small oak tree is now a banyan tree, growing and moving. In 1890, I became the representative of the Iowa Women's Suffrage Association. And that led me right to working with Susan B. Anthony. I became a writer for her newspaper. I became a recording secretary for the National American Women's Suffrage Association. And in 1900, when Susan B. Anthony was in her 80s, she picked me to follow in her footsteps. So in 1900, I became the president of the National American Women's Suffrage Association. I was there until about 1905. George, my husband, took ill, and I needed to take care of him, so I resigned from my position. At that time, my mother fell ill, my father fell, so we had a lot of things that I had to be dealing with. I was always watching what the organization was doing. Dr. Anna Shaw is the individual who took over for me at that time. And it was at that time that I was able to figure out a couple of things with her. Before I resigned, I said, you know, now that we've got this tree going, we've got to figure out how are we going to grow? What's going to be our methodology? How are we going to do this? We could work state by state. We could go right to the federal government and work on an amendment. Now, you do know that Susan B. Anthony approached the Congress every year, and in 1878, her proposal for equal voting rights for everybody was given and presented to the Congress. 1878. And it was given every single year after. It took 41 years for that to be okay. So with seeing that, I'm thinking, we really need to do more state-by-state working because it's not working in the government. We already tried that. The next thing was, how do we catch the sun to grow? What would be our methodology? What are the methods we're going to be using? Well, I thought that the methods would be to work with the individual state governments, connecting to women in those areas who had some influence. And unfortunately, like I said, by 1905, I had left. Dr. Anna Shaw was in charge at that point. At 1910, a young woman by the name of Alice Paul joined the organization. Now, Alice had studied in England, and she worked with the women who were in the suffrage movement there, Pankhurst. She was very involved in what was happening in England, so when she came back here after she finished school, she had all of those ideas. She spoke to Dr. Shaw and said, I would like to start a congressional committee under the National Women's Suffrage Association. Dr. Shaw said, okay, here's $10. The rest you make on your own, Alice and her friends went over to Washington, set up a program, and developed their ideas of what was going to work. Their ideas were, let's have a big parade, okay, which they did. They did it on the inaugural of President Wilson becoming president, caused a big problem. No, not that anybody got hurt, but there were a lot of issues that happened during that parade as the women who were marching were taunted by the people who were on the sidewalk. Then Alice said, okay, we're going to have silent sentinels. So again, this was her idea of how to get this process rolling. And she had women from dawn to dusk picketing the White House. Unfortunately, nobody applauded. They were arrested for obstructing traffic, and they were jailed. In jail, they caused a problem because they wanted to be recognized as a political prisoner. This way you could keep your own clothing, you were separate, you were just treated differently as a political prisoner. They were not. They were treated as criminals. They had food strikes and forced feedings. Not pretty stories. When I came back, and what was going on was the League was getting some pretty nasty publicity from that. So in 1915, after doing some international suffrage work and working through family issues, I came back. I gave Dr. Shaw a break, and I took over again. And by this time, I'm a giant sequoia tree. Because I spoke to President Wilson, I said, listen, you got two choices. Alice Paul just broke away and developed her own organization called the National Women's Party. And if people find out what happened to her and Lucy Burns and everybody else in her organization over when they were arrested, you are going to get some pretty bad publicity. Now, President Wilson was not for suffrage at all. As a matter of fact, in January of 1919, the amendment was put forward and it lost by 1 vote. President Wilson, after talking with me, changed his mind, gave a speech to the Congress 6 months later, June of 1919. The Senate passes the suffrage bill, which they called the Susan B. Anthony Amendment. Now, it had to go to the states. That meant 36 out of the 48 states needed to ratify that amendment. You know how many states we had? 35. Of the states that were left, there was only one state that was willing to have a meeting and a vote in the middle of the summer. It was the state of Tennessee. So I dressed like this, spent July in Tennessee. Think of that, no air conditioning. I expected to be there a few days. We were there a month, working with the senators there. And the key was what you were wearing. You notice how we're wearing all our colors here? If you wore a yellow rose, you were for suffrage. If you wore a red rose, you were not. A young senator by the name of Harry Byrne came in to the Senate, and he had his red carnation on, and when we looked at everybody, we said, I don't think this is going to pass. But what we didn't know is that Henry had a note that his mother put in his jacket pocket. His mother wrote him a very simple note. Hello, dear. This is going to be a challenge, but I want you to be a good boy and vote for suffrage. Love always, Mom. The red rose came down, Henry voted, and we were rolling. So, we now have 20 million new voters. And I didn't need the tree anymore. I needed to plant a new seed. So on February 14th, the birthday of Dr. Anna Shaw, we established the League of Women Voters. Interestingly enough, Dr. Shaw passed away the month before the amendment was passed. I developed this because these 2 million new voters needed to know how to register. They had to pay poll taxes that they didn't know about. They needed to understand what they had to do to carry out the responsibilities that they were now given and to make democracy work. Maud Wood Park was our first president. She was under me in the National Association. She was the Congressional Committee Chair in the National American Women's Suffrage Association. I was the honorary president of the organization until I passed away, so it's delightful to be back here to see all of you wonderful people. After the organization was settled, I went back to Europe, I went back to Africa, I went back to Asia to work with international suffrage. I was very proud of the work with the League of Nations. I really wanted the UN to work because I thought that would be another great place for all of us to be. And in 1959, I passed away. 173 years to work on suffrage issues and 100 years of working with the League of Women Voters. The tree has grown. That second seed that was planted has grown. Property rights are more fair for women. Divorce laws are way more fair than they once were. But you all know that we still have things to work on. Health care and some freedoms that being paid for equal work. So today we need to fertilize and keep on fertilizing that second seed. Now, by having organizations like this is a lot of fertilization. And I can also tell you that America is still interested in this. Next month, the National Women's History Alliance is honoring about 13 women who were valiant women of the vote. And you know who they're honoring? Me. Dr. Anna Shaw, Lucy Burns, who was Alice Paul's, comrade in her work, and 10 others. Now, at this point, the fertilization is in your hands, and I will leave you to go on to the next 100 years and ask you to do exactly what I did. I would never ask you to do anything I haven't done, and that is to give of yourself to the wrongs that need assistance, to the wrongs that need resistance. That's my words. To the wrongs who need resistance, to the right that needs assistance, and to the future in the distance. Thank you for your efforts, and thank you for being here today as well.
All right, to help us celebrate the historic milestone, we are pleased and honored to have the president of the League of Women Voters of Florida with us today. Patty has an impressive resume of leadership and action with the League. Patty grew up in Orlando and attended the University of Central Florida, where she earned a BA in philosophy and an MA in liberal studies. She then worked in news media for several years. After joining the League of Women Voters of Orange County in 2013, Patty quickly assumed leadership duties, serving on the membership committee and working with younger League members. In 2014, she was appointed to their board of directors, where she served for 2 years. In 2016, in the days following the mass shooting at the Pulse nightclub in Orlando, Patty partnered with former League of Women Voters Florida President Pam Goodman to form the Florida Coalition to Prevent Gun Violence, which now includes more than 100 partners. Patty joined the League of Women Voters of Florida State Board in 2015 and moved into the position of president in 2018. She has done much to advance our efforts to improve our state government. Today, she will be talking about some of the current efforts toward that end. I welcome Patty Brigham.
Thank you very much. And Ms. Catt, you're a tough act to follow. Well, first of all, I'd like to say happy birthday to us all, the League of Women Voters. Happy birthday. Today, we not only celebrate the formation of our incredible organization, but the remarkable women who led the way, then and now. Of course, we know Ms. Catt and Alice Paul, but there are lesser-known women like Maud Wood Park. She was the first National League president. She attended Radcliffe, and she was one of only 2 students who supported suffrage for women in 1898. And I'll come back to Maud in just a minute. There was Emma Smith DeVoe. She was known as the mother of women's suffrage, and she focused on the idea that there were peaceful solutions to international problems. She believed that we women could really only win conflict through passive activity. And oh, Emma, if you could see us today, we are not passive. No. Then there was Dr. Carolyn Jefferson Jenkins. She served 2 terms as the 15th president of our National League. She is the only woman of color to have ever served as National League president. And you'll be able to meet Dr. Jenkins when she is at our leadership conference, where we'll celebrate the state centennial in Orlando in April. Closer to home, there was May Mann Jennings. She founded the Florida League and was the first lady as she married Florida Governor William Sherman Jennings. But back to Maud. As I was reading about her and her presidency, I was struck by what she said here. The League has chosen to be a middle-of-the-road organization in which persons of widely differing political views might work together. Well, Maud was definitely onto something, because in her statement, she essentially pointed out that the League is a nonpartisan organization. And I would like to touch on that in my talk today, the importance of our nonpartisanship in such a divided time. We do not endorse candidates nor political party, you all know that, but we do take strong policy positions after study and consensus, and we are a scholarly organization, and we are proud of that. Yes, we are. Now, we have many challenges this year in particular, and we've been watching them build over the past several years. Members wanting to get involved in partisan politics, and of course, many of you are certainly able to do that in your private life, to get involved in party politics. But when we speak for the League, we must remain united in our voice. Why is it so important to remain nonpartisan when we see our democracy at risk? Because it is at risk. There's no doubt about it. Read the news every single day. Anti-climate change. That's what we hear often. There's no such thing as climate change. Science departments being shut down at the national level. And just until recently, you couldn't even utter the words climate change in Florida's capital. We here in Florida know that climate change is a reality. Look at our beautiful water and all we are trying to do to protect it. After all, it was the League in 2014 who worked so hard to get Amendment 1 passed, which is supposed to be protecting our water and land resources. And unfortunately, we have seen our state legislature not correctly allocate the money to do so. That is and remains unacceptable. Well, yes, it does. So the temptation might exist, say, for example, for you to want to champion a legislator or a congressperson who is pro-climate protection. And certainly, we want to get behind that policy because we know that the importance of protecting the earth is not just for ourselves, but for our children and their children and their children. We must protect the planet. We are the stewards of it. So it's tempting to get involved and champion an individual candidate. However, here's the slippery slope. If we get behind championing a candidate for the protection of our precious natural resources, that same candidate may turn around and say, you know what? I think students on our college and university campuses should be able to carry guns. So then we have kind of a dilemma, don't we? Because on the one hand, we like this candidate for his or her natural resources stance, but on the other hand, we're appalled. We don't want our students carrying firearms on campuses. That's crazy. So how do we avoid that conundrum? We don't take partisan positions. As long as we take the policy position, it allows us to work with both sides of the aisle, and that is absolutely essential. It is critical, especially when there is such a divisive climate. And let me give you some specific examples, because I know we are here today to celebrate this amazing organization, which has been able to do so much, and the amazing positions that we've had over the years. I mean, supporting the formation of the United Nations, of course, the ERA, and how long do we have to work towards that to get it ratified? But we have current challenges, and the best way to honor our foremothers is to learn from them and apply what we have learned toward making a better future. We see some real threats to our democracy this legislative session. And I ask you, would Susan B. Anthony sit back and say, let's just rest on our laurels? Hell no. She would be out there saying, get to work. And we have a lot to be done. For example, Amendment 4. In 2018, 65% of Florida's voters, with a large share of help from the League, put Amendment 4 over the finish line. What happened? Last year, Senate Bill 7066, the implementation of Amendment 4. Well, what did that do? It left our returning citizens, these ex-felons, in limbo. Should I register to vote? What about the fines and fees? How do I know if I still owe them? What if I owe them and I can't pay the money? Translation, poll tax. So we know that the legislature did not implement that correctly. And, you know, I like to say that the League, of course, we all say this, we educate, we advocate, and we also litigate. So we are in federal court on this implementing Bill 7066 to right the wrong that the legislature refused to do. Now, 2 years ago, there was a prohibition in place on early voting sites on college and university campuses. The Secretary of State at the time had said, nope, no early vote sites on college and university campuses. Why is this exactly? Shouldn't we be doing everything we can? And that also includes our elected officials. Should we be doing everything we can to encourage young people to vote? Yes. So the League thought, this is not right. This is voter suppression. So we went to court, to federal court. Judge Mark Walker called it outrageously unconstitutional, and we got early vote sites on college and university campuses in 2018. Yes, we did. As a result, approximately 60,000 students voted early on those campuses. They did. So much for saying that young people don't vote. Yes, they do. Let's make it convenient if they're living on campus. And by the way, the legislature didn't take too kindly because in Senate Bill 7066, they stuck in some language that said, if you want an early vote site, you have to have enough non-metered parking, a sufficient amount of non-metered parking, except they didn't define sufficient. So what did that do? It took us right back to court because anyone who's been on a college or university campus knows you cannot find a parking space. And this was never about parking. This was about making it easier for those students who live on campus in dorms and don't have cars to get to their polling place and not make it easy to have an excuse, well, I don't have time to vote, or, the voting place is too far from here. So we have gone back to court, and we are very secure in the fact that we will once again have early vote sites on our campuses, hopefully by November. So. But hear a theme here. There's a theme. When our foremothers were fighting for the woman's right to vote, they were fighting against voter suppression. Here we are 100 years later, and we're still fighting against voter suppression. Here's another example. And this, I'm going to give you a call to action because this is critical. This is probably the most critical voting rights bill in our legislature right now. Representative James Grant and Senator Hudson have filed a bill that would completely gut the Citizens Initiative process in Florida. So Amendment 4, Amendment 1, fair districts, those types of initiatives would likely not make it onto the ballot. Why? Well, currently, you have to have 10% of the signatures from each district on those petitions when they go to the Supreme Court to have them certified. And you have 2 years to do it. Under Representative Grant's bill, you would have only 1 year to have them certified, and you would go from 10 to 50%. Now, we're very thrilled that this past week in the Senate committee that Senator Hudson put forward a good amendment, not perfect, but he made it go from 50% to 33%. Still too much, I hear you. Still too much. It puts an undue burden on our supervisors of elections, on the petition gatherers, on the sponsors of these citizens' initiative, and especially on the voter. And why are these citizens' initiatives so important? Because most of the time when you have one party controlling the legislature and you don't have checks and balances, the voters wait and wait and wait for these issues to be addressed. They're not addressed. Nothing happens, and so the voters take it, we take it into our own hands, and we exercise our rights to say, we need to protect our water. We need to return the constitutional right to voting to our returning citizens. We need to ban assault weapons. These are citizens' initiatives. These are initiatives that are important to the future of our state, the future of Americans, and the future of each and every one of us. We cannot allow our legislature to put these bills forward onto the floor of the Senate because I'll tell you what, it will pass. So, I want to give you the bill numbers. If you have a piece of paper, please jot these down, and also watch your email inboxes because you will see action alerts this week. The Senate bill is 1794. The House bill is 7037. That, once again, is Senate Bill 1794, House Bill 7037. The House bill is going before its committee on Tuesday and the Senate bill on Wednesday, and you'll see all the details in the action alert, which will provide you a way to contact those committee members and let them know that you do not approve of blocking the citizens' right to get an amendment on the ballot. You know, it's pretty incredible. The legislature puts these initiatives on the ballot all the time. So why would they be afraid to have us put initiatives on the ballot? Once again, there continues to be a thread throughout this event today, and that is the League of Women Voters continues and must fight voter suppression. It remains as relevant as it was 100 years ago. Unfortunately, I think it's going to be relevant as we move into the future. How can we best honor our foremothers? How can we best celebrate our 100th birthday? We best do it by learning the lessons of the past, using that knowledge and moving it forward into action, passion, and every individual effort. Remember, each and every one of you has something to offer. We are truly a grassroots organization, truly. And that is one of the things that makes our organization so precious. So I want to leave you with these words. Carry them with you every single day. And they are from our birthday girl today, Susan B. Anthony, who said, organize, agitate, educate. Those three things must be our war cry. Thank you.
Take another bow, Patty. Yes. Oh, thank you so much. We've had two wonderful speakers today. And in reference to Patty's request that we do a little action and actually make democracy work and contact our legislators, we do have bookmarks at our membership table that say the legislators in the Manatee district. So you can find, whether it's Will Robinson or Tommy Cooper, whatever, you can find your legislators there. And you can always go to our website, LWV, League of Women Voters, Manatee.org, and we do have in voter services there. I encourage you to have a cup of coffee, go over and see the historical exhibits. If I have a little time, I'll even take a little tour. And I urge you to keep active and make democracy work. Thank you.
Well, the League of Women Voters is 100 years old this year, and I like to go to all of our local leagues who are having these centennial celebrations and speak and network with these very important members who really are the grassroots of our organization.
Now, it's unique that it's the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment and also the 100th anniversary of the League, so it corresponds the efforts being made.
Absolutely corresponds. I mean, the League of Women Voters came out of the women's right to vote, fighting voter suppression, and of course we're still fighting different kinds of voter suppression today.
Well, tell us a little bit about the mission and the efforts being made at all levels, from the state level through the county levels of the League.
The League of Women Voters of Florida is all about defending and protecting our democracy. We are a nonpartisan organization. We never take positions on candidates or political parties. We do take very strong policy positions, but that is after study and reaching consensus. So we are a very scholarly organization, and we are a very active organization. We educate and we advocate.
Well, one of the key things that the Manatee County League of Women Voters has done for years, and hats off to Rosalie Schaefer and Mary Lynn Parker for doing this, is they put together a candidate guide, which lists all the candidates and their background and everything, which is very helpful to voters as they're contemplating their decision. Why is something like that important?
Well, the voter guide, we publish hundreds of thousands of issues every election year, and we ask very objective questions to the candidates. Usually we have retired journalists working with us to formulate those questions to keep them objective. We want the public to know where all of the candidates stand on the most relevant and pressing issues of the day.
And a final question for you, Ms. Brigham, if we may. What will you want people to know about the importance of the League of Women Voters and their mission ahead?
The League is dedicated to working both sides of the aisle. We are living in a very divided time, not just in the state of Florida, but in our country. So it's more critical than ever that we remain nonpartisan, because that truly allows us to work both sides of the aisle, because while the candidates change and the parties change, the policy positions that the League takes do not change unless they're updated.
And one more final question. What do you want people to take away? You look around today, it's a sold-out house. That's going to make you feel very good to see the outpouring of support for the League. But what do you want people to take away from this event today?
As we move into our next 100 years, we hope to diversify even more. The League must continue to bring in young people, women of color. Of course, men are in the League, so more men, more ethnicities, all types of religious backgrounds. We want to be available to all communities. We want to work with all communities about their needs, and of course the state needs of what we're seeing happening every year. And our legislature is very concerning, and we need all the help we can get on the legislative bills.
Well, I'm sure everybody's looking forward to your keynote address today. Everybody's up in period, not everybody, but a lot of people are in their period costume, kind of celebrating this. And for the League to have this kind of support, it's very important.
It is absolutely wonderful, and I can't emphasize enough that the League is a grassroots organization. We are not top down, we are bottom up. And the reflection of this crowd today, perfect example.